The sun was setting as Special Agent Tamara Washington drove through the quiet streets of Oak Ridge County. Her eyes felt heavy after 14 hours of work. The case file on the passenger seat contained photos from a hate crime she'd been investigating for the past 3 weeks. 12 years with the FBI had taught her many things, but nothing prepared her for what would happen next. She checked her watch, 7:45 p.m. Her mom would be waiting with dinner. Tamara had promised to visit tonight, something she couldn't do often with her busy schedule in the Civil Rights Division. She smiled thinking about her mom's famous chicken stew. The flash of red and blue lights in her mirror made her heart sink. Not tonight of all nights. She was only 10 minutes from her mom's house. Tamara pulled over carefully, turning down the soft jazz playing on the radio. She took a deep breath and rolled down her window, keeping both hands visible on the steering wheel like she always advised people to do during community outreach programs. The police officer took his time approaching her car. Tamara could see him in her side mirror, tall, broad-shouldered, walking with the stiff posture of someone who enjoyed the authority his uniform gave him. "License and registration," he said without greeting, shining his flashlight directly into her eyes. Tamara noticed his nameplate, Officer Hansen. "Good evening, officer," she said politely. "May I ask why I'm being stopped?" "Broken taillight," he answered curtly. "You from around here?" Something in his tone made her stomach tighten. Tamara had encountered that tone before, the subtle hint of suspicion that had nothing to do with broken taillights. "Yes, sir, I'm heading to visit my mother." She kept her voice steady and reached slowly for her glove compartment. "I'm getting my registration now." Officer Hansen watched her every move. His flashlight beam followed her hands, then scanned across the inside of her modest sedan, lingering on the case file. "What's that?" he asked sharply. "Work documents," she replied simply. Tamara didn't immediately identify herself as FBI. Years of experience had taught her to first assess situations before revealing her position. Some officers became defensive around federal agents, and she was off-duty anyway. She handed over her license and registration. Officer Hansen studied them with unusual intensity before looking back at her with narrowed eyes. "This address isn't in this neighborhood. What are you really doing around here?" Tamara felt a chill. She'd been on the other side of these conversations, interviewing victims of racial profiling. The taillight was just an excuse. She'd had her car serviced last week. "As I mentioned, my mother lives nearby on Maple Street. I'm visiting her for dinner." He didn't respond, just stared at her for a long moment. "Step out of the vehicle, please." "May I ask why that's necessary, officer?" His face hardened. "When an officer gives you an order, you follow it. Step out now." Tamara knew her rights, but also knew the reality of these situations. Fighting now would only escalate things. She nodded slowly. "I understand. Before I step out, I should inform you that I'm a federal." "Out, now." Officer Hansen's hand moved to his belt. The sudden shift frightened her. This wasn't about a taillight anymore. As she carefully opened her door, she noticed a car slowing down across the street, a witness to whatever was about to happen. "Turn around and put your hands on the vehicle," Hansen ordered, his voice carrying to the small audience now forming. Tamara complied, her heart racing despite her outward calm. She dealt with dangerous criminals, human traffickers, and hate group leaders, but nothing made her feel as vulnerable as this moment. "Officer," she tried one more time, "if you check my bag, you'll find my FBI credentials. I'm Special Agent Washington with the Civil Rights Division." His laugh cut through the evening air. "Right, and I'm the Chief of Police. Hands behind your back." As the cold metal of handcuffs closed around her wrists, Tamara caught the eye of a teenage boy recording with his phone across the street. She hoped her mother wouldn't see that video before she could call her. The metal handcuffs dug into Tamara's wrists as Officer Hansen pushed her toward his patrol car. The small crowd of onlookers had grown to about 8 people, all watching with worried faces. Tamara noticed a woman in a blue dress shaking her head and whispering to her husband. "Officer, please listen." Tamara tried again, keeping her voice level despite her racing heart. "There's been a misunderstanding. If you just check me." "Save it for the station." Hansen cut her off, his grip tightening on her arm. He leaned closer, lowering his voice so only she could hear. "People like you always have a story, don't you? Always think you're special." The words stung worse than the handcuffs. In 12 years at the FBI, Tamara had faced prejudice before, but rarely so openly, so proudly displayed. She took a deep breath, remembering her training. Stay calm. Document everything mentally. This would all be sorted out eventually. My bag in the front seat has my credentials, she said firmly. I'm asking you to verify my identity before this goes any further. Hansen snorted. Right, and what am I going to find? A fake badge from the dollar store. He opened the back door of his patrol car and guided her head down as he pushed her inside. Through the window, Tamara could see the teenage boy still recording. At least there would be evidence of how this unfolded. The inside of the police car smelled like stale coffee and cleaning products. Tamara shifted uncomfortably, trying to find a position that didn't make the handcuffs bite into her skin. Through the mesh divider, she could see Hansen speaking into his radio, probably calling in her license plate. He returned to her car and began searching it without permission. Tamara watched in disbelief as he rummaged through her glove compartment, then pulled out her work bag from the passenger seat. That's federal property. She called out, loud enough for the bystanders to hear. You need a warrant to search those documents. Hansen ignored her, dumping the contents of her bag onto the hood of her car. Case files spilled out, along with her wallet, keys, and a small leather folder. Tamara held her breath. That folder contained her FBI badge and ID. For a moment, Hansen paused, looking at the folder. He opened it, stared at it, then closed it quickly and stuffed it in his pocket. Tamara's stomach dropped. He had seen her credentials and was choosing to ignore them. What are you playing at? She whispered to herself, watching him collect her belongings and walk back to the patrol car. He slid into the driver's seat without a word and started the engine. As they pulled away, Tamara caught a final glimpse of her car, now surrounded by curious onlookers, her case files still scattered across its hood. Officer Hansen, she said calmly, meeting his eyes in the rearview mirror. I need to make a phone call. It's my right. You'll get your phone call at the station, he replied, not looking back at her. You saw my credentials, Tamara stated, not as a question. You know exactly who I am. His knuckles whitened on the steering wheel. What I saw was a fake ID. Impersonating a federal officer is a serious crime. Tamara couldn't believe what she was hearing. Call my supervisor. The number is on my card. One phone call, and this all stops right now. I don't take orders from you, Hansen said, turning onto the main road toward the police station, especially when you're facing serious charges. The 15-minute drive felt like hours. Tamara thought about her mother, probably calling her cell phone right now, wondering where she was. She thought about her team at the FBI, who would soon realize something was wrong when she didn't check in. As the police station came into view, a large brick building with flags out front, Tamara straightened her shoulders. This wouldn't end here. Officer Hansen had made a terrible mistake, one that would soon come crashing down around him. But first, she would have to endure the humiliation of being processed like a criminal. The patrol car pulled into the station's back entrance. Through the window, Tamara could see two other officers chatting by the door. They looked over curiously as Hansen parked. End of the line, Hansen said, turning off the engine. There was an edge to his voice that hadn't been there before. Was it doubt, fear, or something else entirely? Whatever it was, Tamara knew one thing for certain. This night was far from over. The fluorescent lights of the police station buzzed overhead as Officer Hansen gripped Tamara's arm, guiding her through the back entrance. Two officers looked up from their conversation, eyebrows raised at the sight of a well-dressed black woman in handcuffs. What have we got, Hansen? Asked the older officer, his gray mustache twitching as he spoke. Got someone claiming to be FBI, Hansen replied with a smirk. Found her driving suspiciously through Oak Hills. Had some interesting papers in her car. Tamara kept her face neutral, but her mind was racing. The longer this went on, the worse it would be for Hansen. She'd been in enough interrogation rooms to recognize the look of a man digging himself deeper into trouble. The booking area was small and cramped, with a high counter separating the officers from those being processed. A young officer with close-cropped hair sat behind a computer, looking bored until he noticed Tamara. Name, he asked, fingers hovering over the keyboard. Before Tamara could answer, Hansen cut in. Says she's Tamara Washington, supposedly an FBI agent. He dropped her wallet and the leather folder containing her badge onto the counter. Check that ID. Pretty sure it's fake. The booking officer picked up the leather folder and opened it carefully. His eyes widened slightly as he examined the credentials. This looks official, Hansen, he said quietly. Yeah, well, lots of fakes look good these days, Hansen insisted, but Tamara caught the first hint of uncertainty in his voice. My supervisor's number is on my card, Tamara said calmly. Call him. His name is Deputy Director Reynolds. He'll confirm my identity. The booking officer looked uncomfortable, glancing between Tamara and Hansen. Maybe we should. Booker, Hansen interrupted. Impersonating a federal officer, resisting arrest, and driving with a broken taillight. The young officer hesitated, then picked up the phone. I think I should call the watch commander. Hansen's face darkened. I said Booker. And I said call the watch commander, a deep voice came from behind them. An older black man in a crisp uniform stood in the doorway, his arms crossed over his chest. The name on his badge read Lieutenant Wilson. Tamara had never been so relieved to see anyone in her life. Lieutenant, she began, I'm Special Agent Tamara Washington with the FBI Civil Rights Division. Officer Hansen pulled me over, refused to verify my credentials, and arrested me without cause. Lieutenant Wilson approached the counter and picked up her credentials, examining them carefully. His expression remained neutral, but his eyes flashed with something, recognition, perhaps, or anger. Remove those handcuffs, he ordered quietly. Hansen didn't move. Sir, with all due respect, she could bay. Remove them. Now. The lieutenant's voice left no room for argument. With obvious reluctance, Hansen stepped forward and unlocked the handcuffs. Tamara rubbed her wrists, noting the red marks where the metal had dug into her skin. I want to make a phone call, she said, looking directly at Lieutenant Wilson, and I need everything that was taken from my car. The lieutenant nodded. Officer Chen, please escort Agent Washington to my office and provide her with the phone. He turned to Hansen, his voice deceptively calm. Officer Hansen, my office. After Agent Washington has made her call. The tension in the room was thick enough to cut with a knife. The other officers watched silently, clearly sensing that something significant was unfolding. Tamara followed Officer Chen down a hallway lined with photographs of police academy graduating classes. Her mind was already shifting from the immediate situation to what would come next. This wasn't just about her anymore, it was about making sure no one else experienced what she had tonight. In the lieutenant's office, Officer Chen handed her a phone. I'm sorry about what happened, he said quietly. Tamara nodded her thanks and dialed her supervisor's number. As it rang, she looked through the office window and saw Lieutenant Wilson speaking to Hansen in the hallway. The officer's face had gone pale. His earlier confidence evaporated as the reality of his actions began to sink in. When Deputy Director Reynolds answered, Tamara took a deep breath. Sir, we have a situation, she began, and I think you're going to want to hear about this one personally. Outside the office, she saw more senior officers gathering. The night was still young, and Officer Hansen's education was just beginning. The police station transformed in the hour after Tamara's phone call. What had been a quiet evening shift suddenly buzzed with activity as officers moved quickly through the halls, voices lowered to urgent whispers. Tamara sat in Lieutenant Wilson's office, a cup of untouched coffee cooling on the desk before her. Through the glass walls, she watched Officer Hansen sitting alone in the break room, staring at the floor. The confident swagger he'd shown earlier had vanished. Now he just looked small. The door opened, and Lieutenant Wilson returned with a tall man in a dark suit who Tamara recognized immediately. Deputy Director Reynolds, she said, standing up. Her supervisor nodded, his face tight with controlled anger. Agent Washington. I've been better days. He turned to Lieutenant Wilson. I appreciate your cooperation, Lieutenant. Our team will need access to all the body camera footage and any witness statements. Wilson nodded grimly. Of course, we want to handle this properly. The police chief arrived next, a stocky man with silver hair who looked like he'd been pulled from bed. His eyes widened slightly when he saw Tamara, taking in her professional appearance, then darting away uncomfortably. Agent Washington, he said, extending his hand. Chief Dawson. I want to personally apologize for this incident. This is not how our department operates. Tamara shook his hand firmly. With all due respect, Chief, it is how at least one of your officers operates. And I need to know if he's the only one. The chief flinched slightly at her directness. We'll conduct a thorough investigation. So will we, Deputy Director Reynolds added. The FBI takes incidents like this very seriously, especially when they involve our agents. The room fell silent for a moment. Through the glass, Tamara could see more people arriving, including a woman with a folder stamped Internal Affairs. Lieutenant Wilson cleared his throat. Agent Washington, we've recovered your belongings from your vehicle. Officer Chen is bringing them now. He hesitated. There's also media outside. Someone posted video of your arrest on social media. It's getting attention. Tamara wasn't surprised. She'd seen the teenager recording. I'd like to review the body camera footage. Chief Dawson looked uncomfortable. That might take some time, Toe. Now, Reynolds interrupted. Let's not make this more difficult than it already is. 20 minutes later, Tamara sat in a small room watching Officer Hansen's body camera footage on a computer screen. Each moment of her humiliation was captured in high definition, his condescending tone, her calm responses, the moment he ignored her attempt to identify herself, the rough handling as he placed her in handcuffs. Most damning of all was the moment he discovered her FBI credentials. The camera clearly showed him opening the leather folder, seeing her badge, then deliberately pocketing it and continuing with the arrest. Stop the video, Chief Dawson said, looking ill. I've seen enough. Reynolds turned to Tamara. Do you want to press charges? She thought carefully. After 12 years investigating civil rights violations, she knew that a single officer wasn't the whole problem. Not yet. First, I want to see his record. Has he done this before? And who supervised him? Who trained him? The chief and lieutenant exchanged glances. What? Tamara asked. Lieutenant Wilson sighed. There have been complaints. 3 in the past year, all from minority drivers. None resulted in disciplinary action. I want those files, Tamara said. All of them. That's not standard procedure, the chief began. Reynolds cut him off. Nothing about this situation is standard, Chief. A knock at the door interrupted them. Officer Chen entered with Tamara's bag and case files neatly organized. Ma'am, your mother called the station. She was worried when you didn't arrive for dinner. Tamara checked her watch, nearly 10 p.m. now. Thank you, she said quietly. As Chen left, Tamara noticed Officer Hansen being led to an interview room by the Internal Affairs investigator. Their eyes met briefly through the doorway. For the first time, she saw something new in his expression, fear. He should be afraid, she thought, but not just of losing his job or facing charges. He should be afraid of a world that was changing around him, where his actions finally had consequences. I need to call my mother, Tamara said, reaching for her phone. And then we have work to do. The next morning dawned bright and clear, but Tamara barely noticed the sunshine streaming through her mother's kitchen window. She sat at the familiar wooden table, scrolling through news headlines on her tablet. Her arrest had gone viral overnight. You hardly touched your breakfast, her mother said, refilling Tamara's coffee cup. Mrs. Washington was a small woman with kind eyes and worry lines that deepened whenever she looked at her daughter. Sorry, Mom, my mind's elsewhere. Tamara pushed the eggs around her plate. She'd gotten maybe 3 hours of sleep, her mind replaying every moment of the previous night. Her phone buzzed with another message from Deputy Director Reynolds. The press was asking for a statement. The mayor had called. Even the governor's office had reached out. You could let someone else handle this, her mother suggested gently. Take some time off. Tamara shook her head. That's not who I am. That's not what you raised me to be. Her mother squeezed her shoulder. I know, just like your father. He'd be proud. The doorbell rang, interrupting their moment. Tamara looked through the peephole to see Lieutenant Wilson standing on the porch, holding a thick folder. Agent Washington, he said when she opened the door. I hope I'm not intruding. She invited him in, introducing him to her mother, who insisted on offering him coffee before retreating to give them privacy. I have the files you requested, Wilson said, placing the folder on the table. Officer Hansen's complete record. And I brought something else you should see. He pulled out his phone and showed her a video. It was from the police station parking lot camera, showing Hansen arriving with Tamara in custody. What caught her attention was the officer's face, the smirk as he led her inside. "He looks proud of himself," she said quietly. Wilson nodded. "There's more. We checked his personal phone. Found text messages to another officer bragging about arresting a fancy black lady who thought she was better than everyone else. Sent before he even pulled you over." Tamara felt a chill. He targeted me deliberately. "Looks that way," Wilson said grimly. "Chief wanted me to tell you Hansen's been suspended without pay pending investigation. Not fired. Union rules. Process has to be followed." Tamara opened the folder and began scanning the contents. Multiple complaints from minority drivers over 3 years. Traffic stops that led nowhere. Searches without clear probable cause. And notes from supervisors that repeatedly dismissed the pattern. Officer shows good judgment. Complainant was uncooperative. No evidence of bias. "Who reviewed these complaints?" she asked. Wilson looked uncomfortable. "Sergeant Miller. He's been Hansen's supervisor for 5 years. I want to meet with him." "He's on vacation." Convenient timing. Tamara closed the folder. "Lieutenant, why are you bringing me this personally? You could have sent it over officially." Wilson was quiet for a moment. "My father was one of the first black officers in this department. 30 years ago. Things he went through." He shook his head. "I thought we'd come further than this." Her phone buzzed again. This time it was a text from Reynolds. "Press conference at 2 p.m. Department wants joint statement." As she read it, another notification popped up, a news alert. The video of her arrest had reached national news. The headline made her stomach drop. "FBI agent racially profiled and arrested. Pattern or isolated incident?" "It's never isolated," she said, almost to herself. Wilson nodded. "What are you going to do?" "My job." Tamara stood up. "Decision made. I investigate civil rights violations. Now I have one that landed in my lap." She could hear her mother in the kitchen, humming softly as she washed dishes, the same tune she'd hummed when Tamara was a child and facing problems at school. Some things never changed. "Lieutenant, I appreciate you bringing this to me. But now I need to get ready for a press conference." She picked up the folder. "And I think the department is about to learn that arresting an FBI civil rights agent might be the biggest mistake Officer Hansen could have made." Wilson stood up. "For what it's worth, Agent Washington, not all of us are like him." "I know," she said. "That's why I think there's still hope for change. But first, we need some truth." As Wilson left, Tamara began making notes for the press conference. This wouldn't just be about one bad officer anymore. This was about a system that protected him, and she was uniquely positioned to change it. Camera flashes lit up the room like lightning as Tamara stepped up to the podium. The police department's press room was packed wall to wall with reporters, many standing because all the seats had filled within minutes. Chief Dawson stood to her left, looking uncomfortable in his formal uniform. Deputy Director Reynolds stood to her right, his face a mask of professional calm. Tamara adjusted the microphone and looked directly into the sea of cameras. "Yesterday evening, I was pulled over, humiliated, and wrongfully arrested by an officer of this police department," she began, her voice steady. "As an FBI agent with the Civil Rights Division, I've spent 12 years investigating cases just like this. But I never expected to become one." A reporter raised his hand. "Agent Washington, the video shows Officer Hansen finding your FBI credentials and ignoring them. Will you be pressing charges?" Tamara glanced at Reynolds, who gave a small nod. "This morning, I've filed a formal complaint that will trigger a federal investigation," she answered. "But this isn't just about one officer. Our preliminary review has uncovered a pattern of similar incidents." The room erupted with questions. Chief Dawson stepped forward, raising his hands for quiet. "The department is cooperating fully with the FBI," he said, the strain evident in his voice. "Officer Hansen has been suspended without pay pending the outcome of the investigation. We take these allegations very seriously." A woman in the front row stood up. "Chief, records show 3 previous complaints against Officer Hansen for similar conduct. All were dismissed by his supervisor. Why?" The chief's face reddened. "I can't comment on ongoing personnel matters, but I assure you we're reviewing all aspects of this case. Tamara watched him squirm, thinking of the folder Lieutenant Wilson had given her. There was more than just Hansen's record in there. There were notes from other officers who had reported concerns about his behavior, only to have them ignored. Her phone buzzed in her pocket. A text from her friend Lisa, who worked in the technology division. Check your email. Found something on Hansen's work computer. As the press conference continued, Tamara's mind raced. What had Lisa found? The chief was now taking questions about department policy, promising reviews and training programs, all the usual responses when departments found themselves under scrutiny. When it was her turn to speak again, Tamara stepped up with new resolve. This incident has exposed serious concerns about how this department handles complaints, especially from people of color, she said. As part of the federal investigation, we'll be reviewing all traffic stop data from the past 5 years, broken down by race, reason for stop, and outcome. The chief's head snapped toward her. This hadn't been part of their agreed statement. We'll also be interviewing citizens who filed complaints, she continued, and we'll be looking closely at the supervisory structure that allowed these incidents to continue. After the press conference ended, Reynolds pulled her aside in a quiet hallway. That wasn't what we discussed, he said, though there was no real anger in his voice. I know, Tamara replied. But look at this. She showed him the email from Lisa. It contained screenshots from Officer Hansen's work computer, text messages between him and 4 other officers, joking about targeting black drivers in wealthy neighborhoods. Reynolds studied the messages, his expression darkening. How many officers are involved? At least 5 that we can see. And look who's included in some of these group texts. She pointed to a name. Sergeant Miller? Hansen's supervisor? Reynolds looked stunned. Tamara nodded. The one who dismissed all those complaints. He's not on vacation. He's been sending messages to Hansen since last night, coaching him on what to say to internal affairs. Outside, they could hear reporters shouting questions as the chief tried to make his way to his car. The story was exploding, and it was about to get much bigger. What do you want to do? Reynolds asked. Tamara looked through the window at the crowd of reporters. I want justice, not just for me, but for everyone who didn't have an FBI badge to protect them. Her phone rang. Lieutenant Wilson. Agent Washington, he said when she answered, his voice urgent. 2 more officers just came forward. They have stories about Hansen and Miller you need to hear. Tamara met Reynolds' eyes. We're just getting started, she told him. The wall of silence was beginning to crack, one brave voice at a time. 6 months later, Tamara stood in the back of the police academy classroom, watching 25 police officers listen intently to Lieutenant Wilson. On the screen behind him was a still image from Officer Hansen's body camera, the moment he discovered Tamara's FBI badge and chose to ignore it. This is where everything changed, Wilson told the class. Not just for Officer Hansen, but for our entire department. The last half year had been a whirlwind. What started as one wrongful arrest had blown open like a storm, revealing problems that ran deep through the department. After that press conference, more officers had stepped forward, brave men and women tired of the toxic culture created by Sergeant Miller and his protected group. The investigation had uncovered text messages, altered reports, and a pattern of targeting minority drivers that stretched back years. 5 officers, including Hansen and Miller, had been fired. The chief had retired early. The mayor had established a civilian oversight board with real power, and Tamara had been there through it all, not seeking revenge but reform. Agent Washington, Wilson said, noticing her in the back, would you like to share your perspective? She walked to the front of the room, feeling the eyes of the officers on her. Some looked uncomfortable, others curious. A few nodded in respectful recognition. When Officer Hansen pulled me over that night, he didn't see an FBI agent, she began. He didn't see someone who'd spent her career upholding the law. He only saw the color of my skin, and he made assumptions based on that alone. The room was silent. I could have just focused on punishing him, but that wouldn't have fixed the bigger problem. She gestured to the training materials on their desks, the new bias training program she helped develop. Real change happens when good officers stand up and say, not in my department. After the class, a young female officer approached her in the hallway. Agent Washington, I just wanted to say thank you. She looked nervous. I've only been on the force 8 months. The night you were arrested, I was working dispatch. I heard how Officer Hansen talked about you over the radio before he even approached your car. Tamara nodded, remembering the text messages they'd found where Hansen had bragged about targeting a fancy black lady. Did you report it? She asked gently. The young officer looked down. No, I was afraid. Everyone knew Miller protected his guys. She looked up determined. But I would now. That's what I wanted to tell you. Later that afternoon, Tamara sat in Deputy Director Reynolds' office, finishing her final report on the department's transformation. 6 months of your life, Reynolds said, reviewing the thick document. Was it worth it? Tamara thought about the changes she'd witnessed. New leadership, new policies, new training, a civilian review board, body cameras that couldn't be turned off. And most importantly, a change in culture. Officers now felt safe reporting misconduct. It was worth every minute, she said. This department could become a model for others. Reynolds nodded. The Attorney General called. He's creating a special task force to replicate what you've done here in other departments across the country. He wants you to lead it. Tamara sat back, surprised. A national task force. Your experience is unique. You've seen it from both sides now, as an agent and as a victim. That evening, Tamara visited her mother for dinner, just as she'd planned to do the night of her arrest. As they sat on the porch watching the sunset, her mother reached over and squeezed her hand. Your father always said everything happens for a reason, she said softly. Tamara nodded, thinking about the task force offer. One terrible night had opened the door to change that could help thousands of people. Not just in one department, but across the country. Her phone buzzed with a text from Lieutenant Wilson. You'll never guess who just applied to join the Civilian Oversight Board. The teenager who recorded your arrest. Says you inspired him. Tamara smiled. Change happened one person at a time, rippling outward in ways you could never predict. Officer Hansen had wanted to humiliate her, to put her in her place. Instead, he'd helped her find her purpose.